What an exciting week this is. Parshas Bereishis. We begin the Torah anew, and with that we begin learning the Sefer Pituchei Chotam from the beginning. This week, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, we are going to learn the first piece in Sefer Bereishis and the last piece in Parshas Bereishis. I'd like to give credit to those who have helped me along the way here. First of all, I'll be using this Hebrew edition of the Pituchei Chotam, which is a beautiful print in Hebrew. I've also used much the Sefer Pituchei Chotam that's been recently translated into English. There's the Statmar family edition on Parshas on Sefer Bereishis, Shemais and Vayikra, and the Packer family edition on Bamidbar and Devarim. One great benefit, besides being in English, is that they add sources for all of the midrashim and gemaras that are brought by Rabbi Yakob, which are many. So it makes making these slides much easier. So here we begin. Familiar words, which we will learn a new light from Rabbi Yaakov. The beginning, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, the land was desolate. There was choshech al pnei Sahim. V'ruach Elokim merachavas al pnei hamayim. V'yomer Elokim yihi ar. Hashem says, "Let there be light." V'yihi ar, and there is light. There is I don't know if it's bothersome to you or something that's interesting. Is that there's an aleph beis. We have an alphabet. The first letter in the aleph beis is aleph. The second letter in the aleph beis is beis. So, if we're writing this amazing book by God himself, you'd think he'd be able to figure out a way to start the Torah with the letter aleph. But he doesn't. He begins with the letter beis. The Zohar brings a beautiful story. Kadboy lemivre alma, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world, asu kol asvin kamei. All of the letters came before him. Misaifa arashay, from the end, means from the letter tuf, all the way to the beginning. Shiriyas as tuf l'meil bereshi. So letter tuf came in first. And the Zohar goes through all of the letters. And what their claim was, why the Torah should begin with them, all the way to the letter beis. They each got rejected. Comes the letter beis. Also, us beis. Amrle. The letter beis comes and says, Ribban Alma, Master of the universe. Nicha kamach lemivrei be'alma. You should start the creation of the world with me. Dechi mevarchin lach la'ela v'lasata. Because devi mevarchin lach la'ela v'lasata. Because you use me to bless the world. Baruch. The word baruch begins with the letter beis. Amar lakodesh baruch havade bach avri alma. V'at te'sherusa lemivrei alma. You are for sure correct. Certainly, the world will be created with you. And you shall appear in the beginning of creation. And that's why the Torah begins with a beis. The story doesn't end. Kaima as aleph le'alas. Letter aleph was just standing there, didn't come in. Amar lekodesh baruch hu aleph lama le'ant lama les ant alas kamoi. Why haven't you come in? Kishar kalason, like all the other letters. Amar mei. So the letter aleph says before HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rebbein Alma. Begin the chamini the chol asvin nafkumin kamach belai say alta. Listen, I saw all the other letters were not successful. So what am I going to do? Visu, and furthermore, the Raver Vada, you already gave the letter beis this great gift. It's not proper for the king, such a great king, to pass the reward from one servant to another. Even though I will begin creating the world with the letter beis. You will be the first of all the letters. Lesbi Yehuda, and I will only have unification. Bach. Bach Yishrun Kol Chushbinin V'chol Evdei Da Alma V'chol Yechuda D'Loi Hevi Ela Ba'as Aleph. you will represent something much greater, and that is the yichud of Hashem. And with that, the world is created with the letter Beis, and the Eis Aleph is left. So what does the Eis Aleph get? Well, he gets Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's the yichud. There's another creation in the world, says Rabbi Yaakov, which may even be more important than that of creation of the world itself, because the creation of the world is dependent on this. The first letter in the Aseres Hadibros, the giving of the Torah, which creation is dependent on, is the Aleph. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. When God introduces himself to the world, he uses the Anav, the letter Aleph, the humble Aleph. And not only that, Kinar Mitzvah, the Torah Or. Torah itself is referred to as light, which is the letter Aleph. Now let's take a look at the beginning of the Torah. Bereishis bar lekim es hashamayim ves haaretz beis reishis. The world begins with the letter Beis. But after the world is created, the land is desolate. The world's been created. The Beis, you got the world created, but there's nothing in it. Until HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes along, Hashem says we have to introduce the Aleph into the world. Let there be Ar. Let the Ar of Torah shine into the world. Vayihi Ar. And Eis Aleph gets its place. Humility. You may seem like you lose out in the beginning when you put your needs, your wants aside for others, and you let other people go first. The Beis goes first, but it's the Aleph who holds up the world. The Oirei Shel Olam. Have a very lichtige, an oirisdika week. But I'm not done yet. Let's jump now to the last piece in Parshas Bereishis from the Pituchei Chotam. All right. Hashem oizle ama yitain. Here we go. You know, there's a funny story. There's a story with Lamech and his wives. Lamech is married to two women, Anna and Sila. And then they have kids. And then, according to Rashi, one shot in Rashi, Lamech goes out hunting, and he can't see, and he ends up killing Cain and his son Tuval Cain. And then his wives separate from him, and he tells them, Ki Shivasayim, you can Cain. The Pashup shot is, if Cain got 7 years, Shivasayim, he got 7 years. Seven generations, I should say. He got 7 generations. So for killing on purpose. So Lamech Shivim v'Shiva. So certainly Lamech should get more than that. He should get 77. Yeah, that's a Pashup shot. Rabbi Yaakov shares with us here a beautiful teaching. Mamish amazing. Cain represents the Kina de Misavusa, impurity, evil, Ra, the Yetzer Hara. And the pasuk tells us, Kishav Asayim you can Cain. So let's understand evil a bit. A great Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara is talking about the Yetzer Hara. The Gemara says, Darash Abavir Vitem Rabbi Shubal Levi Shiva Shem Aziyesh Leitzar. The Yetzer Hara's got 7 names, and I underlined them for you. HaKadosh Baruch called him Ra. Moshe calls him an Aral, an uncircumcised. David calls him impure Tameh. Shlomo calls him hated. Yeshaya Navi calls him a michshel, a stumbling block. Yechezkel calls him a stone. And Yael calls him Tzefoni, the hidden one. 7 names for the Yetzer Hara. Rabbi Yaakov explains that what does it mean the Yetzer Hara 7 names? That means there's 7 methods that the Yetzer Hara, 7 koiches, 7 powers, 7 ways the Yetzer Hara tries to get us to stumble. And even if you conquered one, you can't stop fighting, you got another 6 to go. And says Rabbi Yaakov, that's the side of the pasuk. 1 second here. That's out of order. Ki sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. That tzaddik will fall 7 times because there's 7 koiches the Yetzer Hara will use to fight against the tzaddik. But he'll make sure he keeps getting up until he beats all 7. Urashem Yukashlu Bera, 1, or Yerusha will fall down. With 1, he'll get knocked out. Tzaddik is willing to fight for all the battles against the Yetzer Hara. But how does he fight? How do you fight against the Yetzer Hara? So Gemara in Kedusha tells us, Kach Kadosh Baruch Hu Amar L'Am Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells us, Bani, Barasi Yetzer Hara, I created Yetzer Hara with 7 koiches. Ubarasi Le Torah Tavlin, and I created an antidote, a spice, to counteract the Yetzer Hara. That's the Torah. So Rabbi Yaakov explains how Torah has in it an antidote, a tavlin, a spice for each of these 7 koiches of the Yetzer Hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls the Yetzer Hara Ra, and then he gives us a Torah. Ki lekach toiv nasati lachem. The Torah is called toiv. So to counteract the Ra of the Yetzer Hara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Torah, which is called toiv. Moshe calls it an orel. Like the pasuk says, "Umaltem as orlas lavavchem." The Yetzer Hara is like an orel, like a covering over our heart. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Torah, which is a milah. Umaltem, the Torah we use to circumcise our hearts, to get rid of the Yetzer Hara off of our heart. David HaMelech calls the Yetzer Hara Tameh. And we have Torah, which gives us Yir Shemaim, Yiras Hashem Tahira, Medas La'ad. We have purity, which is able to combat the Yetzer Torah, the Tahara that one gets from learning Torah. Yael calls it a Tzafuni, and the Torah says, David HaMelech says, Belibi Tzafanti Mrasecha. I hide your words in your words I hide in my heart. I take the words of Torah and I put it in my heart, and now the Torah becomes a Tzafuni. I was thinking perhaps we could say, Gal Einai, we David Hashem, Gal Einai. Reveal my eyes. Let it not be hidden, the words of your Torah, the revealedness to be able to fight against the Koich, the Yetzer Hara, which is hidden. Yecheskel calls the Yetzer Hara an Evan, and to counteract that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us Luchais Evan. And more than that, the Torah is compared to water, and we know that water, if after time, will penetrate even through rocks. Yeshai calls it a michshol, something that's crooked. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, David HaMelech tells us, Pekudei Hashem Yesharim Misamchei Leiv. The words of Torah are yashar, they're straight, they're not a michshol. And Hashem Oiz La'ami Yitein, Hashem Yirechas Ami Vasholim. Peace, the opposite of something that's looking to stumble, to fall upon. So Torah is shalom. So for every koyach of the Yetzer Hara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the ability to counteract that. And that's through the Torah, the 7 koyches of Torah to combat the 7 koyches of Ra, of the Yetzer Hara. Now, in addition to the 7 koyches of Torah, we know that Torah tells us Shivim Panim LaTorah. Every part of Torah has 70 facets to it. So let's take those 70 facets of Torah and add the Zayin Koiches of the Torah, the 7 powers that the Torah has, Keneged, the 7 Koiches of Ra. And what do we get? That's 77. That's Oiz. Hashem Oiz li Ama Yitain. Hashem gave us strength. What's the strength that Hashem gave us? That's the Torah, the Shivim Panim LaTorah, and the 7 Koiches of the Torah to fight the Yetzer Hara. Hashem Oiz li Ama Yitain. Now let's take it back to the pasuk that we started with. Kishavasayim Yukim Kain. Kain, who is the king of the Savusa, the nest of impurity, he has 7 koiches, Kishavasayim. But Lemech, if you rearrange the letters, it becomes Melech. And the pasuk said that Lemech was married to 2 wives, which Rabbi Yaakov in a previous piece explains. Those 2 wives refer to the Melech, who's married to Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. When you're married to Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh, you take those as your wives, then you're a melech on those, then you have Shivim V'Shiva, then you have the 77 koiches of the Torah to be able to fight the powers and the nest, the kain of impurity. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us this Siyat Shema as we begin the new year. We begin Sefer Bereishis again. We should allow those koiches of Kedusha, of Tahara, of Toiv, of Limrat Torah, those 77 koiches of oyes of strength to impenetrate us and to be able to overcome our Yetzer Hara, and we should have a wonderful year. Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach.